Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Before I go any further, you could please subscribe down below. Just a lot of free content. We're coming up on 600 videos, just a lot of great stuff. We've been kind of changing the angles of the video, going a little bit more in detail on certain topics that maybe don't have a great understanding by people who are new to the journey. So as I always say, if you have any questions or comments down below, I spend about 15 minutes a day moderating, going through comments, and I respond to basically everyone I can. So I will respond to you if you leave a comment. So today I wanted to talk about, I did a video yesterday on 10 points that I've noticed and how I applied acceptance to my somatic OCD recovery journey. And today I have a video called 10 Points on Acceptance. Now, in these 10 points, I have unconditional self, life, other acceptance, different facts about acceptance, where I am now, and stuff along that journey as well, since I think it can be a very up and down journey with many questions. And a lot of people have questions about acceptance, whether it works or not, and stuff like this. So everything I'm going to tell you is intertwined into the data and the research, my opinion, what do I see when I talk and work with people, and so forth. So the first thing is, what is acceptance? So unconditional self, life, and other acceptance, which was really coined in those particular three fashions by Dr. Albert Ellis in, one second. Yep. There we go. It's not crooked anymore. Was coined by Dr. Albert Ellis in 1955. It was kind of in the whole periods of the 50s because he was a psychoanalysis before that, or psychoanalytic, and really going off the Sigmund Freud type of philosophies when it came to psychotherapy, and then invented his own type of cognitive therapy, which was called REBT, Rational Emotive Behavioral Therapy, which was a precursor to CBT, which is now one of the gold standards for all changing perspectives in mental health disorders. So it's definitely very evidence-based. That's one thing I get asked. Is acceptance evidence-based for OCD? Is acceptance evidence-based at all? Absolutely. There are thousands and thousands of peer-reviewed studies done on cognitive behavioral therapy. So when people say REBT is not evidence-based for OCD, it's not a correct statement, even though it might not be REBT and it's just titled CBT. REBT is a precursor to CBT, so it's very evidence-based. We do know that one thing that Albert Ellis noticed is that people that had high levels of depression and chronic anxiety had much more irrational beliefs than people on the contrary. But he did notice that most people did have a plethora of conditional beliefs based around conditional self, life, and other acceptance, not unconditional. So that's what really acceptance is. And there's a lot of different people that practice different types of cognitive behavioral approaches, many different philosophers from thousands of years ago. If you really break down the meanings of unconditional self, life, and other acceptance, Albert Ellis got a lot of that from ancient philosophers such as Stoics from 2,000 plus years ago. All you have to do is really read Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, and you can see where some of the philosophies pour into the framework of unconditional self, life, and other acceptance. So the second question is, how long does it take to apply? And there's actually no answer for this. And I know that can be really frustrating to hear because, you know, when we go to the doctors for, say, a flu, and you ask, well, you know, how long does it take to usually get better? The doctor says, oh, with these antibiotics, it might take 7 to 10 days, but it may take a little longer or a little shorter, and you have a sense of reassurance. Well, this isn't really the case for anxiety disorders such as OCD, PTSD, and GAD, because it's so individualized and they really don't exactly know the full picture of OCD. What we do know is the beliefs are driving the cycle. More than likely, the chemical imbalance theory is outdated. I've done many videos talking about that. I do get kickback on that. There may be a serotonin dopamine imbalance, but you don't actually need to understand that at all to recover from OCD. And remember, recovery doesn't mean cured. There is a difference. An alcoholic who's in recovery for 15 years still more than likely has the genetics to really be pulled toward addictive behaviors if they're not careful about it throughout the rest of their life. But I'm not going to talk about all those specifics. You can watch many different videos on the channel covering all those. So there is no answer. There's no direct answer I can give you on how long it takes to apply acceptance, which goes into the next question, point number 3. why some get it wrong. And this is including myself as well. So one of the number one reasons why acceptance is actually taught wrong, in my opinion, is because it's taught in a course type fashion. It's not like that. Acceptance is a philosophy shift. You don't just apply acceptance to certain things. When you have unconditional self-acceptance, you have unconditional self-acceptance for anything that happens to you. Hence, it's called unconditional. It says the definition on the tin. So it takes a little bit of time to see this, but it's well worth it when you work through all the ups and downs, relapses, backdoor spikes, and everything to actually bring you to a place where you actually start to feel it. It's more of an internal surrender, and you can't really force it. It's difficult for me to tell you how it feels. Unconditional other acceptance is probably the one that is the strongest for me. Unconditional self is probably the least right now, since I only recently started working on that. And I have a pretty strong sense of unconditional life acceptance. So it takes some time to see this. I haven't even been working on recovery yet for 2 years, only 19 months. And I've made drastic progress in my perspective shifts while still feeling very anxious in some scenarios with my newer stuff, and not actually bothering me as much as, say, the somatic OCD journey did when I had no sense of acceptance whatsoever. So, it really can't be pushed and it can't be forced, and it is possible to develop it. I know there's a lot of people that say that's not attainable and it's unrealistic. I thought the same thing, and it just takes some time to actually start to feel it. So let's break them down one by one. What are we, 7 minutes? Okay, so unconditional self-acceptance and how I started applying that. When I talk about unconditional self-acceptance, I like to talk about social media because I think it's a breeding ground for conditional self-acceptance. Why are rates rising correlated with these types of products, such as dating apps, such as Tinder, Bumble, and all these things? And remember, it's not that these things are inherently bad for you. It's that they can be slippery slopes, especially when you have a disorder like OCD, and for the general public as well. So a lot of people are living their entire life online, which I'm not going to give an opinion on that. I think technology is not going anywhere, but I do think it needs a firm balance. Not an insane balance where it's like very strict, but a balance. Well, you'll probably tip over back and forth for the rest of your life. And you can accept that as unconditional life acceptance and self-acceptance. So social media, when I have talks with my friends, it's a highlight reel of people's lives. And when you don't have an acceptance of yourself, it's very easy to look at pictures of people who might have taken a picture 100 times to get the right lighting. I'm sure there are people out there, which is sad. There's a lot of undiagnosed body dysmorphia and subclinical body dysmorphia where people are feeling as if they have to prove themselves to other people to get some sort of acceptance. I would say in everything in life, conditional self-acceptance is probably lacking. Unconditional self-acceptance is probably lacking in every single human, if not, the vast majority, unless they understand unconditional self-acceptance, because it's not our innate response on how we respond to certain things. And even though that's our innate response, it doesn't mean it's healthy, and it can be changed. So you don't actually need anyone's approval. You would prefer it. And that's a really, really important thing to talk about because it's lacking in a lot of societies, modern day societies are all over the world in general. So social media really can be a breeding ground for that. You don't actually need to post pictures of where you are. You don't need to post pictures of your food. You don't need to do any of that. It's fun and you can do it if you want, but you have to, frankly ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for attention? Usually the answer is yes, in my opinion. So let's go to point number 5, which is unconditional other acceptance. A lot of people know that I've struggled with anger a lot. There's a lot of just raising of voices in my household. The people I hung out with, we had a lot of irrational beliefs when I was a teenager, very rebellious and angry and stuff like that. So yes, anger is a natural emotion, but there's something I see that's wrong a lot. And I'll talk about this in number 7. Do I lose my emotions? Anger is caused mainly, the heightened experience of anger is caused by a belief that the person is currently hold on other people. So if you have unconditional other acceptance, anger might pop up from time to time, but it won't be, if you have an imaginary dial of you turning up the heat of anger, and anger really doesn't have any benefit at all. And we're not talking about the throwing over, oppressive dictatorships and severe poverty and all these other really 0.001% factors that affect modern day first world. We're all very fortunate for that, by the way. Gratitude is very important. This is very difficult for people to grasp because it's not as simple as, well, that person's evil and that's why they did that. That's a very humans think in very superficial manners because critical thinking takes a lot more effort than that in the majority of cases. So yes, anger is a natural emotion. No, it doesn't mean it needs to be there, as many people will actually think about that. So number 6 is unconditional life acceptance. And that's really important to talk about as well because you have OCD. OCD is not going to go away, the genetic component, but you can recover. But this does mean that you will be susceptible to, something happen to you in your life until they be able to zap out the genetic code, which I don't really see happening in our lifetimes. Rob thinks it might happen. I personally don't. I think it's too complex because of my understanding of neurology, and I don't think stuff such as the Neuralink has true application in our lifetime. I think it does have application, but not right now. I think it's way too advanced in the future. But I could be wrong. I mean, I'm wrong on many things. So the other thing with unconditional life acceptance fears is, fear of being canceled. That's a big one. The fear of being canceled, if that happens to you, you can accept that just happened in your life. You can also accept the other people for canceling you, and you can also accept yourself for the flaws that you may think you have. So unconditional life, self, and other acceptance, all intertwined. I think if you really work on unconditional self-acceptance, the other ones kind of rolls over into the other ones. So that's important. Number 7, do I lose my emotions? So there's a lot of New York Times bestsellers. There's a lot of researchers who make some really great points. I've read some of their books. I think they're fantastic. But I think that the core of their belief system and their philosophy gets them into trouble. I think the same thing about Jordan Peterson. I love Jordan Peterson. I look up to him greatly. But I think his beliefs on conditional other acceptance and conditional self-acceptance is why he comes across so emotional. I could be wrong on that, but that's just what I see in someone like that. I see that very well in other highly intelligent political people I follow. And their points are good. Their delivery's poor because they have conditional other acceptance. They don't actually need to deliver in the manner they do. It's really kind of everywhere. Your conditional beliefs are what's basing a lot of the heightened and catastrophic, like just turning up the dial in those emotions where you don't actually need to have that happen. This isn't about never feeling anger in your life again. That's a misconception. It's about understanding that, it doesn't need to be blown out of proportion, but there are times where you might get a burst of that angry emotion and feeling, which is more than likely going to happen. So, I read a quote one time by a famous New York Times bestseller who was saying that being a stoic is bad. And when they explained it, if I thought what they thought, I would think the same thing. But I do personally think that they're wrong, because they think that being a stoic, and I do know many people that think this, mean you're emotionless. It's not. You can't control your emotions. No, any Facebook post or social media post that's telling you can control your emotions is highly inaccurate. What you can control is your perception, your beliefs, which starts to dictate your emotional outcomes in the background, in the long run. So your emotions are products of your beliefs. So if you have conditional other acceptance, you'll more than likely feel angry, resentful, and vengeful, where that's a symptom of your belief. Well, if you have unconditional other acceptance, that doesn't happen. It's not as simple as, oh, that person made me angry. That's not what it's happening. That it's a particular aspect of it, the events and aspect of it, but the belief you're holding is what's driving up that response. Number 8, Kirsty did a great video on this. Agreement is not acceptance. I'm not going to touch on that too much, but I highly recommend watching that video. Agreement doesn't mean acceptance. You don't need to agree with something in your life to accept them for who they are. That's a hard concept for people to get. I've been yelled at and screamed at by people online and my friends and in person and my family members where they've asked me about my philosophies, and I try and break this down. It's not an easy thing to conceptualize because it takes so long, and humans are so bred of instant gratification in the way we live right now. Number 9, how did it affect my marriage? The book Stop Destroying Your Relationships Before They Destroy You was a great book. People always ask me about stuff outside of, the normal type questions. And I had to accept myself for who I was. And I had to realize that Erica is a separate person and I don't have to agree with everything she does. She doesn't have to agree with everything I do. So that's really important too, but I'm not going to go into too much of that. I have done a video on that. I do want to leave the remainder of the couple minutes left in this video on number 10, and that's where I am today. I have a lot of people ask me where I am in my journey, and a lot of them are asking based off reassurance, which I was there as well. So I'm not going to go into those details in the way that most people want to see me answer it, but I will say this. I don't look at recovery as oh, I'm not recovered yet. I kind of just move throughout life and slowly work on my perspectives. That took me quite some time to actually get to a point where that was actually happening in my life. There was a large majority of my time where I was spending thinking about crossing a finish line. And that's why people get acceptance wrong. Like I said in number 3, why people get it wrong. The beginning part of my journey, I really didn't have that much anxiety as I did just severe, hardcore sensations. And now where I am in my journey, I'm much more chronically anxious at certain times because I'm working on things I never worked on before. I had a lot of compulsive behaviors that I knew were compulsive and I didn't actually want to address them. And I'm addressing them for the first time in the last month or two. And they're huge compulsive behaviors. So I don't look at how much longer am I going to be suffering for and how much longer am I going to be up and down for. That's not really a factor in my life anymore. What's a factor is what situations happen to me in my life and how can I apply acceptance or change my beliefs while these situations. It's not that engaging because I don't need to worry about engaging with the thoughts as much anymore because my foundation for acceptance is a little better. Engaging versus disputing, plenty of videos on that. So sorry if that came across in that manner. That's not what I meant. What I meant is when things happen in my life, I have a better understanding of acceptance of how to perceive that as I go throughout my day. I know that might sound confusing. It's hard for me to even explain, but there's not I need to do these certain things in order to recover. I don't think like that anymore. I just think to myself, okay, well, I really just didn't work on my body dysmorphia for a long time. I still put my whole entire self-worth on the way I look, and it's now to actually start bringing down that belief. And I've been pretty chronically anxious again for quite some time again. I went a couple months not being anxious, and now I'm back to being really severely anxious. Not disabling anxiety, but background noise, just humming. So there's multiple different parts of the journey, and I just want to be real with you because I think it's important to do that. But a lot of people will be working on recovery for a year, and they might be like, fuck this. I worked on this for a year. Why am I still suffering? Because you haven't accepted it yet. And that's okay. It takes time to get there. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'm going to do another couple videos like this, 10 points and so forth. So don't forget to subscribe down below and have a great day.